Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behavior Revolution Scriptures. It's been quite a week on the socials, hasn't it? Dealing with rebukes and rude, disgusting behavior. And sometimes, as we're going to talk about today, the body has to stand up for what is right, and the body has to rebuke a situation and speak out a situation. And believe it or not, it's actually what Yahushua calls love. And we're going to go into that today. Let's look at your screens. What's been happening? We're going to talk about adversary today. Adversary. So this chapter here is happening at the exact same time as what we dealt with in our last video. Saul getting advice from the witch at Endor. This is happening at the exact same time, only in a different part. This is with David and King Achish. This is happening at the same time. So adversary. While Saul was consulting the witch of Endor, the Philistines continued gathering for battle at Aphek, while the armies of Israel camped near the spring of Jezreel. And that's where Gideon had selected his 300 best warriors to attack the Midianites. The armies of the Philistines were marching forward by hundreds and by thousands, and David and his men were marching behind with King Achish. Remember, he's gone and defected. He's gone and hanging out with the Philistines now because he's fed up with having to look over his shoulder for King Saul being after him. So he's fighting with them. And when the rest of the Philistine generals, the princes, arrived, they were very unimpressed. "What are these blasted Hebrews doing here?" they complained. "That's Dave," King Achish said. "He was a servant of King Saul and Israel. But he's been with me for days and years, and ever since he defected to our nation and into my service, I've never had a problem with him or seen any evil in him." Ever since he's defected and been with me, he's been wonderful. But the Philistine princes were angry. "Get rid of him. Find a place, somewhere, anywhere but here. Send him there. He can't go into battle with us, for he may turn and we'll end up with an adversary instead of an ally." There's that word we're going to look at today, adversary. So these princes are very dubious of David because he was King Saul's right-hand man at one point, and his son-in-law. So they're like, "We're not taking him into battle. He may turn on us. We'll end up with an adversary instead of an ally. He might kiss and make up with his former master by handing him our heads." I mean, this is the same David who the Israelites sang war songs about while they danced and celebrated, isn't it? Same guy? They sang, "Saul has slayed 1,000 men, but David's killed 10,000. This is the same guy, isn't it? Forget it. This word adversary. What does the word adversary mean in Hebrew? Look at this. Satan. So, the word Satan in Hebrew is an opponent, arch enemy of good, an adversary, to withstand. The Hebrew word that's being translated as enemy or adversary in this text here is a familiar one, Satan. That's right. The accusation by the Philistine princes is that David would become a Satan of Philistia. Despite the common habit of using Satan as a formal name for the devil, it's actually just a common Hebrew term that means adversary or enemy. Watch out, the enemy's coming. Watch out, the Satan's coming. It's not actually a proper name. It's not actually the devil's name. That's what he is, though. So that's why people have just taken to calling him it. It was once Lucifer, wasn't it? So, or Hillel. And here we see a good example of what an adversary, a Satan, does in the eyes of the ancients. First and foremost, a Satan is a traitor. Second is that a Satan will fight against his former ally and king, but no allegiance. Third is that even though he might fake loyalty, the words are hollow because a Satan is a liar by nature. Faking words, remember that. Faking words. By your words you will be found righteous. By your words you will find deliverance. Sorry. Wrong translation of scripture there. Teachers are sprouting that all the time. By your words, by your words, by your words. Are your words kind? Are your words loving? By your words. No, sorry, not. It's by your behavior. Because look, a Satan can fake loyalty. He can fake words. Words are hollow because a Satan is a liar by nature. These are good things to remember about the attributes and behavior of the evil one, whom we actually call Satan. No matter what a person declares with their mouth or their keyboard, we must discern the behavior. These are perilous, dangerous days we're in now, guys. It's not good enough to just have ushy-gushy, loving, butterflies and rainbows and silly pictures that everyone's posting and with scriptures on them. And no, we're entering into warfare now, guys. And Yahushua is calling some people who can handle it, who are mature enough to deal with certain issues. Yeah? Not because they want to, but because they want to be obedient and listen to his voice. And they're not afraid. So, that's what adversary means. Keep that in the back of your mind. Adversary. A Satan. An enemy. A Satan. We're going to pick it up a little bit later. So, King Achish is cool with David, but his princes don't want to know him. No, we're not taking him with us. We don't trust him. So King Achish called for David. As Yahuah lives, you have been honest with me, and I wish you could march into battle and back at my side. I've found no fault in you before, but the other kings, the leaders of my troops, won't allow you to go with us. So go home now. Go in peace, and don't do anything to upset them any further. This decision is certainly in David's favor. I mean, could he have really gone to battle against Yisrael? But he acts as though he's offended. That's not fair. What have I done to deserve this? Haven't I done everything you've asked? Why shouldn't we go and fight against the enemies, my king? Why shouldn't we be allowed to go? We didn't do anything wrong. Yes, Dave, you're a breath of fresh air and just as good as a messenger of Elohim in my eyes. But the generals of my troops have said they won't allow you to go into battle with us. So get up early tomorrow morning with your servants, my servants, and return to the home I have given you in Ziklag. Go as soon as it's light. Go home. Chill out. So the next morning, David and his men got up early and travelled south to the land of the Philistines. But the Philistine army went north to Jezreel. When David and his men reached Ziklag 3 days later, they discovered that the Amalekites, here we go again with these blasted Amalekites. The Amalekites had raided the desert hill country, attacked Ziklag in David's absence, burning it and capturing alive all the women and other inhabitants that David had left behind, carrying them back towards Amalek. So, do you remember Amalek? The Amalekites? Recently this was the people that Saul was told to wipe out. And he did, but he kept the king alive to parade him around and show how amazing Saul was. And that was the time that Samuel said to him, no, not on Yahushua. Yahuah's not happy with you. And they had a altercation, ripped the garment, ripping the kingdom away from you. That all happened around then. How many times since the exodus from Egypt have we read that Yahuah wanted his enemy, the Amalekites, completely wiped out? Yet Yisrael never completed the task. Not through Moses, not through Joshua, not through the judges, and certainly not through Saul. So they still remain a huge thorn in their side. And that same adversary, unrepentant, unteachable, savage spirit, still lives on today, raising its ugly head in the behaviors around us, even in Yahushua's immersed. This Amalekite spirit, this wicked spirit, this wasn't see if you can reason with them, go out there and tell them to repent. These aren't my people. these people I want annihilated. There's no question now. Wipe them out. Yeah? Wouldn't. And David was off his face. Remember, all the women have been gone. His wives have been kidnapped. All the wives, women, children, everything's gone. So David was off his face, upset. Because aside from his loss, some of his men talked about stoning him because they were so bitter about their families being taken. But David took comfort in Yahuah, his Elohim. Did David deserve the blame for this? Absolutely. You're right. It was his lying, deception, and trying to play both sides of the fence at the same time that put them all in this situation. Standing on the fence. Standing on the fence of conflicts. Standing on the fence, just willing to watch all sides. Oh, I'll watch this one and I'll watch that one. I'll just sit here from my dirty little office and watch everything on Facebook, on YouTube. Everything. I'll just sit here and watch. Non-committal, like a gutless, spineless little 𝗕𝘁𝘀. I'm not going to get involved with anything. No, because I might get caught out. I wouldn't lower myself to actually talk to people. This is just so disgusting, this behaviour. You know, you're one of those gutless wonders. Well, look here. David was like this. He's playing all sides. David was allying himself. David was allying himself with the enemy and leading his men off on a junket to fight against Yahuah's set-apart people. The enemy stealthily came in and stole away their families. While David's doing all this scamming and doing things, turns his back, and the enemy came and stole his family. Let those who have ears to hear listen. While you're out there playing all the different camps, doing all your little shady deals, putting out all your little weird-ass teachings, affecting people and manipulating people, just wait, because when you turn your back, the enemy will be there. And Yahushua will allow it to happen. They're called consequences. Those who have ears to hear, listen. Then David called for the priest, Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, and instructed him to bring the priestly shoulder garment, which is the ephod holding the Urim and Thummim stones, which he did. And David spoke to Yahuah. Should we pursue these raiders? Can we catch them? Go and get them. You can catch them, no problemo. Go and rescue your families, Yahuah answered. Now, obviously, that's paraphrased, because the Urim and Thummim stones really only gave a yes or no answer. So David set out with his 600 men, and they came to the 𝗬𝗓𝗓, a dry creek bed where he left behind 200 men who were too exhausted to continue the pursuit. So he's down to 400. Then in the open country beyond, some of his soldiers found an Egyptian. So they took him to David, fed him, gave him water, also some fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins. And after the man had eaten, he regained his strength. He had not had food or water for 3 days and nights. Who are your people, mate? Where are you from? From Egypt. I used to serve an Amalekite, but my master ditched me 3 days ago because I was sick. We'd gone raiding in the desert country against the Kerethites and territories of Judah and Caleb, and we burnt down the town of Ziklag. Can you lead me to this raiding party? David said. Can you lead me to them? Sure, I'll take you to them, if you'll swear to me by Elohim that you won't kill me or give me back to my master. And he led David to where the Amalekites were spread out all over the place, eating and drinking and dancing, because they'd taken such great spoils in their raids against Philistia and Judah. So David fought against them from one twilight to the next, and he killed all of them, except for 400 young men who escaped on camels. So David recovered everything that had been taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, from the smallest thing to the greatest thing. None of the sons or daughters or property of any kind, nothing was missing. Yahuah restored everything. David brought everything home and also captured the Amalekites' flocks and herds, which they were driving ahead of other livestock. And the people agreed this would be David's share of the Amalekites' property. David and his people returned to the Wadi Besor, where the 200 had remained behind, exhausted. And those men came out to meet David, and all those with him. And David greeted them all. But some of the worthless and greedy ones who had fought alongside David spoke out. "These men can get stuffed. They didn't come and fight with us. So why should we give them back the things we recovered for them? Sure, they can have their wives and kids back. Well, thanks very much. They can have their wives and kids back. That's it. We'll keep the rest, thanks. And they can sod off. You guys wanted to stop halfway and have a rest, and left us to go and fight, so you're not getting any of the spoils. No booty for you." David said, "My brothers, this is not how we're going to treat what Yahuah has given us back. He's protected us and given us success over the raiding party that attacked our city. Who the hell would agree with you about this? We just had an amazing victory, and these scoundrels have been stingy." The share of the one who fights is the same as the share of the one who looks after the supplies. We all share equally. Yeah. The scripture describes the men who had this disgusting, ungenerous attitude as Ra and Belial, evil and worthless. That's a behavior. Stingy, scrimgy, wicked, evil and worthless behavior. Yeah. Ra, Belial. In fact, after David said that, David made this a law and an instruction, and it still remains in Israel today. Apparently it's still in Israel today. Modern day Israel. And after David returned to Ziklag, he gave part of the spoil he had taken to his friends who ruled over Judah, with the message, "This is a present for you, taken from the enemies of Yahuah." These gifts were sent to Bethel, to Ramoth in the desert, south to Jatir, to Aroah, to Simoth, to Eshemawah, to Rakal, to the towns of the Jeremites, to the towns of the Kenites, Hormah, Borashan, Athak, and to Hebron, all places where David and his men had lived and travelled. That's the text today, guys. It's interesting. It's an interesting fact. It is. It's an interesting fact of history that Amalek, in their first dealing with Israel, attacked the rear of the Exodus column when they were coming out of Egypt. All those people, mass mixed multitude, the Amalekites came along straight away. Didn't hold back. They attacked the rear of the Exodus column that was marching out of Egypt. And that's where the elderly, the sick, the lame, the pregnant women and the young children were travelling. And here with David, we find that Amalek waited until the men of the village were gone, and then came and attacked the women, the children, the sick, and the lame, and the elderly. Pay attention. So it is a gutless, cowardice, slimy characteristic of Amalek, and by extension, the spirit of Amalek, to go after the most vulnerable of Yahuah's people when they least expected. Where are we going with this? Today, the same adversary spirit, Satan spirit, the same Satan spirit of Amalek is alive and kicking, prowling the earth like a savage wolf. And its very nature is to attack Yahusha's bride, especially the young, easily stirred, immature, and newbies in the belief. Evil Amalek Jesuit type. And in the last days, Yahushua will use this wicked characteristic to lure the nations and religions who all harbour the adversary spirit of Amalek in their behaviour. He's going to lure it. He's going to draw them all in and bring them to destruction. But until he separates the wheat from the poisonous darnel planted in amongst us by the enemy, we must always be discerning and very careful in our dealings and communications, even within the bride. Most certainly within the bride. Got that? The enemy has planted fake believers, fake wheat. It's called darnel. It's poisonous. It tries to poison the wheat, extinguish their passion, extinguish their excitement, extinguish their joy in the fruits that are growing by putting heavy stuff on them. Yahushua told us to love our enemies. Yahushua told us to love our enemies. And looking at the patterns that we've gone through so far, the enemy was outside Yisrael, in the pagan nations, not fellow Israelites. And get this was a lie. Yahuah never told Yisrael to love his enemies, did he? Yahushua told him, love your enemies, turn the cheek, go the extra mile. Yahuah never told Israel to love his enemies though, did he? Amalek? No, he insisted they be annihilated. We might be required to love our enemies. How that love is behaved is different in circumstances. That's needed. But what about this? Yahuah didn't tell us to love Yahuah's enemies. So while we aren't fighting flesh and blood, we must speak out and rebuke the evil enemy behavior if it is affecting those among us. Yahushua's style of loving is not merely confined to a two-dimensional, light and fluffy, marshmallow-scented gushiness for him and others in the bride. No, that's not just what it's about. This is warfare. And often, as one matures, they are called to do some hard loving, which means to confront, address, and annihilate a conflict. Of course, as with Joshua and David, there's only ever success in a set-apart battle if Yahushua is the one who initiates it and fights it ahead of us. If it's just us and our pathetic emotions, you're going to fall on your face. You're not doing the rules. You are acting in anger. You've taken something personal. You're doing it of yourself. And that's a battle that's just a waste of time. That's of yourself. But if you are battling because Yahushua has told you to do something, then he will fight the battle. You don't have to worry about it. So you don't have to be stirred up by any of the reactions or responses. However, the body is so immature. Yahushua's body is so immature still today because she refuses to grow a backbone through the 3 rules. She's so immature that she actually takes instruction and rebuke personally. Cries, persecution, I'm being persecuted, I'm being hated. That's not kind words. And they call a brother and a sister an enemy. Instead of seeing that someone is actually willing to go the distance and suffer so they might see what Yahushua is doing, see what Yahushua is saying. As we discussed in our video tonight with Christopher and Victoria, nobody really wants to go out of their way and cause trouble and speak out and rebuke and have to do that. So if somebody takes the time out to pull you up on something, you might want to pay attention. This was interesting. This came up this week. A comment by the religious teacher Lew White upon being rebuked. By our words we will be declared upright, and by our words we will be forgiven. That's not true. It's actually by our genuine behaviour, because words can be faked. What do we see up the top there in the spiel about Amalek? In the adversary, Satan is a liar, Satan is this, Satan will turn the tables, Satan will double cross you, Satan will this, Satan will lie. Words can be faked. Typing words can be faked, particularly now in the age of multimedia. Social networking. Everything's fake. The words that are being typed are not at all what's being felt. Yahushua warned us we would face enemies within our own household. Now, keep in mind, this is aimed at me, at Christopher, Victoria, the behaviour revolution. Enemies. We're like Amalek. We're like Satan to him. That's an enemy. That's what enemy means. Isn't that interesting? All because he got rebuked. He must be just so beyond rebuking. Enemies with, it's so dramatic. Enemies with our own household. But we are not to condemn, only forgive. Now, if you're in the place to forgive people, wouldn't that mean that you're up here and people are doing things wrong to you, but you're in the high place to forgive? Instead of actually taking the rebuke and facing it. This does my head in. It's insane. I will pray Yahush's will be done, and his body will stop tearing itself apart. Well, that's good. That's wonderful. Good. All hail the big Pumbaa. Wonderful. What wickedness is this? Can't believe it. All because someone dared to rebuke. Oh, don't be like this, brothers and sisters. Don't be like it. That's all we've got for today. Interesting, that enemy spirit, that Satan adversary spirit is still in the body. It's rampant. Jesuits are infiltrating. You've watched enough videos. Christopher and Victoria, we've all discussed it. It's all the Catholicism gone into the Protestants, gone into the Messianics, gone, and the wickedness of the Yahudim Jewish thing has gone into the Messianic thing, and now it's all culminated into a swill. And now they're starting to discover Yahusha's name and bringing that swill into the ♪ movement. So I encourage you to come out from among them, as scripture says. We thought we'd come out from among them when we found the ♪ movement, because we had the name and the feasts and all these amazing things that we found out, all the first principles, which were amazing, even though half of them were still shadow talk. But there's a lot more to come out from. Yeah. So run, guys. Find your deliverance. Work out your deliverance with fear and trembling, and just run from the Satans. All right, Satans? No more Satans.